Welcome to the Coronavirus Diaries with me, Vasilis Katsardis. Today, I'm very happy to have my friend, former colleague and writer, Chris Slaney from Israel. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to ask, first of all, what is the situation in Israel now regarding coronavirus? How do you guys deal with it? And how is the government and the people how do they take all of the measures that are taking place?
Okay, so first of all, I'll have to give you the up-to-date stats. Just a second. In Israel, as of this morning, we have 3,035 people sick. 49 of them are serious. 79 have recovered so far. And unfortunately, we have 10 fatalities. And this is out of a population of approximately 9.5 million. So that's the situation. Obviously, the government takes it very seriously. And we are now in pretty much close to a serious lockdown. As of yesterday afternoon, we're not allowed to go out for exercise. You're allowed to go out to take your dog for a brief walk. You're not supposed to move more than 100 meters from your front door. You can go out for essential supplies or the pharmacy or a doctor's visit, but the police might stop you and make sure you've actually got some shopping in your bag. And if they find you going out to the supermarket 4 times a day, you could be in trouble. It's tough for me because I'm a runner. I'm always in training for my next marathon, and I like to get out there every day. And I have to admit, this morning I went out for what was probably an illegal run just before it got light. We have some what I would call scrubland or something like a nature reserve not far from here. I was almost the only person out there, and I got back without being caught.
Okay, you're admitting online that you went against the law, so...
Well, yeah, but I see a lot of it about. I mean, I can hear the freeway sometimes, and I'm sure all that traffic can't be essential workers. There must be something else going on. And my neighbor across the street washed all his cars this morning just to get out to have something to do.
Yeah, so in Greece, for example, the government has created a system where you need to send a text on a 5-digit number for free to say there are like 8 reasons why you can get out, and you text something so that if they catch you outside, they know that you're going somewhere and you've sent that, otherwise you get fined. I thought that was a smart idea to impose the quarantine to an extent,
Yes,
like
yeah.
you send number 4, for example, and then you run,
Yeah.
Now,
no, here we have a slightly more insidious and sinister program. The government has invoked special powers to allow it to use surveillance of your mobile phones.
Yeah.
So they know where you are. So, for example, this morning, I don't usually run with a phone, but this morning I was very careful to leave the phone at home. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good idea. Good idea.
The biggest problem we've had on the religious front, we have various, in the Jewish community in Israel, we have various degrees of being religious. There are people who are fairly secular, like me and my family. There are people who are a little bit more observant. And then we have a very orthodox, very ultra-orthodox religious, not even a minority, probably around 18 or 20% of the country, who live in their own neighborhoods, are extremely observant Jews, tend to be very clannish, stick together. And it's taken a long time for the message to filter down to them that this is something serious and they should be listening to what the government tells them. They're not big fans of the government to start with, unless it comes to, getting hold of welfare checks. So, for example, at the beginning of this week, TV was given one of the TV channels was given some pictures recorded in a Hasidic wedding with hundreds of guests dancing together through the night. Really not a good idea. And kids were still going to school, and all the shops were open, and people were out, and people were mingling, and it made the more secular area side of the population extremely angry to see this going on, because of course if and when these people fall sick in any great numbers, they're going to be crowding the hospitals, like everybody else. They don't have their own hospitals. When they get sick, they're not going to complain to the rabbi. They're going to go and complain to a doctor. So, but no, I don't think people are thinking about it in sort of end of world apocalyptic type terms. But I would point out that Israel's Minister of Health is an ultra-Orthodox Jew. And I heard him on the radio, on one of their radio stations the other day, saying that before Passover, which is roughly falls around the same time as Easter, the Messiah is going to come and he's going to fix this. I decided that every day I would make a point of phoning somebody I haven't spoke to for a long time, whether friend or family or former colleague. And that's also, those calls can take anything up to an hour sometimes because we got a lot of catching up to do. And I find out what's going on in California or Brazil or South Africa. And it's a good way to stay in touch. And we tend to, buck each other up a little bit.
What I'm very interested in listening from your side is this. President Macron and Prime Minister Mitsotakis in Athens and other leaders and heads of states have said that we are in a war now. But you have experienced, unfortunately, many wars, and we have, both of us, lost friends in wars. So how would you compare the situation to an actual warfare?
In my experience, this is nothing like a war. I would, first of all, stress that although I've been in a few wars, I've always been there as a civilian, as a non-combatant. And in a way, I'm also in this war as a non-combatant. I'm not a healthcare worker. I'm not a fighter in that sense, as it were. And I don't think this is anything like a war. It's very, very strange. It's an extremely unusual and for some people very scary situation. But it's not like a war, I think, because in a war zone, as a non-combatant, or even maybe as a fighter, whether you come to harm or not, you think it's really just a roll of the dice. Are you going to be standing in the wrong place at precisely the wrong moment when an explosive device goes off, or a sniper is looking for a target, or something like that? But right from the outset of this coronavirus issue, we've been bombarded with statistics right from the early days of the lockdown in Wuhan. And we've been told that in your country, say 60% of the people are expected to get sick in some way, shape, or form. Most of them will recover, but of those 60%, 1 or 2% will die. And out of those 1 or 2%, the majority are going to be people over 60, like me. And a larger proportion, evidently, are going to be men rather than women. And people who have underlying health issues are more at risk, and so on and so forth. So when you're faced with this picture from big data, let's call it, you really feel like you're in somebody's sights. You're in the crosshairs all the time. And it's not a roll of the dice. It's a statistical model that's going to get you. So in that sense, I don't think it's like war. It's nothing like my experience of war. And also in war, whether it's a transnational war or a civil war or a war being fought by remote control where missiles are raining down on you from far away, there's definitely a front line. There are war zones, even within a city, even within a neighborhood. I've been in war zones where the war has been happening a few blocks away, but just down the street, people are sitting out having a cup of coffee and taking their kids to school and waiting in the queue at the ATM. And that's not the case here. Here we're all at risk from this coronavirus. We're all, as it were, on a front line. And the way governments are telling us to self-isolate or quarantine ourselves or lock down, the empty streets, the eerie feeling, it's a real kind of flat earth policy that shows that everybody is part of this. And that's really just not the case in my experience of warfare.